Hello. A Charter of Liberties granted by a ruler to his subjects had precedence both in England and elsewhere in Western Europe. The rebel barons who held King John's feet to the fire in June 1215 at Runnymede on the banks of the Thames near Windsor will have had no idea that their particular Great Charter, great as in lengthy, imposing constitutional limitations on the monarchy, would have such lasting influence. This is the memorial commemorating the event established by the American Bar Association. The charter was sealed by King John on the 15th of June 1215 on the opposite side of the river to the memorial. Magna Carta deals with a feudal society, a hierarchical system based on land ownership and mutual obligations, and applied only to those who were free, around 1/2 of the population at the time. Today, it's seen as a foundation stone of democracy. Magna Carta was primarily concerned with the barons' own interests, but the key principle in the document, that the king is subject to the law, is clearly implied. Magna Carta was an issue in the English Civil War, and again at the Glorious Revolution, and it influenced the American Declaration of Independence. In more recent times, the United Nations Charter and various declarations of human rights owe a debt to Magna Carta. John's arbitrary rule and abuse of power had led a group of barons, mainly those of the north of England, to demand the restoration of their ancient and accustomed liberties. An appeal to Pope Innocent III resulted in a recommendation John deal with them fairly and threatened excommunication of any baron that rebelled. But rebel they did, formally renouncing their fealty to John and setting up a headquarters in London with the backing of the city merchants. With both sides preparing for armed conflict, Stephen Langton, Archbishop of Canterbury, arranged a truce to allow time for a diplomatic solution to be negotiated. Langton took the lead in drawing up a charter modelled on the Coronation Charter of Henry I, issued in 1100, setting out how the new king would rule. It took 4 weeks for the initial draft to be worked up into the Great Charter itself. In all probability, the time it took Archbishop Langton to persuade the barons to agree to clauses that went beyond self-interest and were of wider benefit, including establishing standards for weights and measures. The tightly drafted clauses have since been numbered for ease of reference. Behind them, we can glimpse the problems of John's reign leading up to this watershed moment. Clause 1 guaranteed the rights and liberties of the English Church. John's pressurising of the Church to elect his nominees to senior positions and his initial refusal to accept Stephen Langton, the Pope's candidate as Archbishop of Canterbury, had led in 1208 to a papal interdict on England and Wales. Churches were closed and all sacraments forbidden, with the exception of the baptism of infants and end-of-life confession. In an age when faith was an integral part of the everyday life of ordinary people, this had widespread impact. Clause 13 confirmed the ancient liberties and free customs of the City of London. Taxation, wardship, marriage, inheritance and debt all received attention. When it came to the law, the assizes were to be held more regularly, and no free man shall be taken, or imprisoned, or deceased, that is legally dispossessed of land, or outlawed or exiled, or in any way harmed, nor will we go upon or send upon him save by the lawful judgment of his peers, so try by jury, or by the law of the land. And to none will we sell, to none deny or delay right or justice. In other words, the king must rule according to the law and not on a whim. Clause 35 sets standard measures. There shall be 1 measure of wine throughout our whole realm, and 1 measure of ale, and 1 measure of corn, namely the London quart, and 1 width of dyed and russet and hauberk cloths, namely 2 ells below the selvage, and with weights moreover it shall be as with measures. A London quart was a measure of both weight, 8 bushels, and volume, 8 gallons. Among the minor detail was the inclusion of a clause that all the weirs on the Thames and Medway and throughout all England shall be done away with. This was because weirs obstructed commercial river traffic and were a threat to fishing rights. A council of 25 barons was appointed to enforce the charter. For the official sealing at Runnymede, John appeared in full bling, dressed in the imperial regalia of his grandmother, Empress Matilda. When the document had received the official seal, letters were dispatched to all county sheriffs and to selected royal officials with orders that the charter should be read out in public. The peace between John and the rebel barons proved temporary. Within months the First Barons' War broke out, but Magna Carta proved durable. It was reissued with minor changes by Henry III in 1216, 1217 and 1225, and it resonates today. 4 copies of the original charter survive, 2 in the British Library and others in the cathedral libraries at Salisbury and Lincoln. The 1225 version became definitive and was reissued in 1265, 1297 and 1300. And that brings us to the end of another series, one which was nearly called Law and Disorder. We hope you've enjoyed it, and thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, hit the like and subscribe buttons and click on the notification bell to be informed when the next video is available, or you can subscribe by clicking on the rose window over my shoulder.